Every single year, without a doubt, there is a breakout running back who goes in the latter parts of your drafts. We saw it with guys like Chase Brown last year, Bucky Irving. J.K. Dobbins wasn't quite a top 12 guy, but he was still a top 24 player at the running back position last year. So today, we're going to give you 6 different players who we think could be the next breakout RB1 in fantasy football this year. And to format this a little on the front end, we're each going to bring a player to the table who is currently going within the first 6 rounds, but we're also going to talk about 3 players who are going after the first 6 rounds as well to give you some depth at who we think these breakout players could potentially be. And Cameron, you're going to talk about the upside case for a guy who went in the early second round of the NFL draft this year.
Yeah, TreyVeon Henderson. I was fighting to have him as my RB2 when we were scouting these guys. I gave the edge at the end of the day to Omarion Hampton, but I've liked him all along. In college, incredibly productive, 6.1, 5.3, 5.8, and finished with 7.1 yards per carry his senior year. Obviously, splitting time with Quinshon Judkins. Probably going to be a very similar situation he's walking into in New England. He also had over 10 yards per reception last year. He feels similar. Again, I'm not calling him this player, but I'm drawing a parallel to a Jahmyr Gibbs of he's going to be under 200 carries his rookie season, most likely, unless we see an injury to Ramondre Stevenson. But we could see him flirting with that 40 to 50 reception mark. The obvious thing, too, is the difference. Ramondre Stevenson is a better pass catcher than I think David Montgomery is, or at least has been utilized more in the passing game. So that's something to keep in mind, which could keep him a little bit lower. But I would assume, especially with the way that every single person, it feels like, has been talking about his pass blocking ability, he's going to be more involved in the passing game. We saw Antonio Gibson, involved on this team last year, seeing over, I think, 150 touches. The issue for him is he's just going to have to get the touchdowns, right? We saw Jahmyr Gibbs with double-digit touchdowns. James White was another player I was going to draw parallel to. We saw him under Josh McDaniels, who was once again the Patriots offensive coordinator. James White was a top 10 running back in 2018 with less than 100 carries. He had 83 receptions on 123 targets for 751 yards that year. Again, 12 touchdowns. So that's going to kind of be the kicker for TreyVeon. I believe that he's going to be extremely efficient. I believe he's going to be used in the passing game. The issue is he going to find the end zone? This offense, I do think, is on its way up with Drake May, who looked good at the end of last year. So there's a lot of positives. I believe in the talent. I think he's going to have a pretty decent role. But obviously, like you're going to hear with all these guys, they're just going to need things to fall into place correctly for him to get to cracking or flirting with that top 12 running back 1 status.
Well, I think it's interesting you made the comparison between Ramondre Stevenson and David Montgomery, because I think a lot of people also forget, like, David Montgomery can catch the ball in the passing game.
Yes.
But I also think TreyVeon Henderson is going to be the much better pass catching back than Ramondre Stevenson. Ramondre's just not efficient, man.
No.
4 yards a carry, 3.9 last year. It doesn't feel like a tough assignment to overcome Ramondre Stevenson, despite what we've seen from him in previous years. Where do you land on the upside case here for TreyVeon Henderson, Ty?
I think it's as simple as when you look at the playmakers on this team, we're talking about Stephon Diggs, we're talking about Mac Hollins, then kind of a group of players like Kyle Williams and Demario Douglas, Kayshon Boutte, and Ramondre Stevenson. And I think there's a case, even right now, before he's even played a snap of the NFL, that TreyVeon Henderson is the most dynamic weapon in this New England offense. And if he shows out enough in training camps and the OTAs and all that stuff that, like, hey, we need to try to get the ball into TreyVeon Henderson's hands as much as we can. And really, if we see that report come out that, like, New England will do whatever they can to get the ball into his hands, it's like, we have liftoff. Like, we are wheels off the ground on TreyVeon Henderson having a running back 1 type season. And not to say that he's going to be the overall running back 1, but for a guy to be, inside the top 12 then by year's end, there's a path to it. So there's a lot in the range of outcomes, you could say. But again, if he's the most dynamic weapon, it would be kind of counterproductive for New England to not try to get him the ball as much as possible.
And this offense just needs to create explosive plays. And even looking at Ramondre last year, 67th in explosive run rate. He's just not doing that for this backfield. So you go out and you improve the offensive line this offseason. I get they haven't revamped it to the degree of a Minnesota Vikings or anything like that, but you made improvements along the line. You got another weapon on the outside to spread this offense out a little bit more with Kyle Williams, and hopefully that all pans out. But one thing that TreyVeon Henderson is going to provide your offense is explosives, and that gets you on the football field. So I wouldn't be surprised if, over the course of the season, we start to see TreyVeon Henderson over kind of, Cameron, you named it at the top, and this is going to be a perfect way to put a bow on it. That Jahmyr Gibbs progression in his rookie season, where this is almost going to be like a Diet Coke situation of that, where TreyVeon Henderson might not be as productive as a Jahmyr Gibbs, because I just don't think this Patriots offense is as good as that 2022 Detroit Lions offense, or 2023 Detroit Lions offense, excuse me. But you could easily see that progression throughout the course of the season. And if over the back half of the year, TreyVeon Henderson is a steady, like RB8, RB7 contributor on a given week, that might be enough to boost his total season numbers right up to that RB10 to 15 range. Before we go any further, though, transition to our next running back. We're diving into redraft season, getting you prepared for your redraft leagues this upcoming year. So if you love fantasy football, this is the place you want to be. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell as well, so you know when all of our newest content is up. I promise we love fantasy football just as much as you do. So as much as we're here talking ball with you all, we also want to remind you of the fun and camaraderie that comes with fantasy football as well. So even as we give you our analysis, we hope you can have some fun with us along the way as well. So hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell as well. Ty, we'll transition to you here. You're going to pivot off the rookie running backs. Talk about a guy who actually had a fairly good, produced at a much higher than expected rate last year, but you think he can even take it one step further going into 2025?
Yep, Chuba Hubbard, as our good friend Cameron likes to say. Chuba finished inside the top 12 in points per game, but he was a running back 15 overall. So whether or not you count him as a breakout already, I think, like you said, Lucas, there's an opportunity for Chuba to take another step after what we saw last year. Dude was top 5 in opportunity share last year. He was top 10 in rushing yards and breakaway runs and in route participation. So this dude was super involved last year in all facets of the offense. And I don't expect that to change. So why would that type of player be going at the running back 17 or running back 18, depending on where you're drafting? And I really think it's one of two reasons. One is that you think the backups are going to be eating into his workload. Let's set the record straight on the backups here. Rico Dowdle was a career backup and was given a $2.75 million contract by Carolina this offseason, I should say, after his 1 year of relevant usage. So the team does not have a lot invested in him. And then they use a 4th-round draft pick on Trevor Etienne. And early reports since the draft have him more in a competition with Raheem Blackshear than they do with Rico Dowdle. So if Etienne isn't really in the picture and Rico Dowdle, with how much the team is invested, I'm not really expecting a whole lot to change in the backfield. And I think the other reason why Chuba Hubbard could be going at this running back 17 price tag, it's just that they're not fans of the offense, or that they don't think Carolina's offense can be that great. And I know it's not a super exciting offense, but you do have to call a spade a spade. They got better as the year went on last year. After their week 12 bye, they were 12th in points per game after being 29th in weeks 1 through 11. They were 15th in rushing yards per game, after being 24th. They were 17th in passing yards per game after being 31st. And they were 21st in yards per game after being dead last before their bye week. So to me, Chuba Hubbard has a shot of exceeding what he did last year, for as involved as he is with no looming threat in the backfield in an improving offense. To me, that is kind of the trifecta. That is the equation that I'm looking for a guy that can break or truly break out and kind of solidify himself as a running back 1 in fantasy football.
So before I ask this question, I want to remind people we're pleading the upside case here. But I want to put both of you on the spot. If you have your projections up that are going to be in our draft guide, by the way, that'll be dropping June 1st, cool $10. get all of our projections, breakout, bust, sleepers, everything of the sorts, full team pages as well. So much coming. We'll have more announcements about that. But how do you all have this black backfield split for Carolina? Like, what's the rushing share you're giving to Chuba Hubbard? Because this is such a sticking point for me, where I don't know how bullish I want to be on how many touches he gets this year out of this backfield. So, Ty, where do you have your splits at?
I got it closer to 60 than I do to 50.
Okay, so you're at a 60% rushing share. Okay, right around there. Cameron, where are you at?
I'm at 54, but I've been considering moving it higher, closer to probably end up around 56, 57%.
Yeah,
Probably
so
56.
I originally started at 54, and then the more I thought about it, the more I just believe in Chuba so much more than Rico Dowdle. He's got a fresh contract, getting paid significantly more than Rico Dowdle. At what point are you just having Rico Dowdle play the Miles Sanders role, and ETN is just the backup if you get inconsistency or an injury that pops up for one of them? So yeah, I've got Chuba sitting right around 57% as well, which again is enough if you get him right around that 240 rush attempt mark that he had last year. I mean, you're in business here, Cameron. Where do you stand on Chuba? Are you feeling as bullish as Ty is on him at all?
I'm starting to get there a little bit more. At first, I was just thinking, they're probably going to look to split, and then I started thinking about Dave Canales as a play caller. If you remember 2023, Rachaad White was about as inefficient of a runner as you could get in 2023, and he gave Rachaad White 272 carries and another 70 targets on top of that, right? So he's shown, I'm going to use one running back no matter how inefficient, and Chuba was much better than Rachaad White was in 2023. It was not very close either. I mean, 3.6 yards per carry it's tough. I mean, that is rough.
That's as tough as it gets.
And he gave him 270 carries, like I said. So Chuba Hubbard at 4.8 yards per carry. That's a pretty significant upgrade. You add in the fact that this Carolina offense looks like it's going to score more touchdowns this year, or at least be in the red zone a little bit more, because Bryce Young is developing. It's hard not to get more bullish on Chuba, and yet ADP wise, we're pulling back on him, right? I mean, Jonathan Brooks isn't taking snaps this season, most likely. And even if he does, they're not significant snaps. We know what Rico Dowdle is. It's just like there's not a lot of unknown here. And yet drafters are kind of treating it like there is. So I definitely understand the upside case for Chuba.
Yeah, right. And again, we're going to put the bow on it there because it's the upside case here for Chuba Hubbard. Is it probably more realistic he finishes somewhere in the running back 14 to running back 17 range? Yeah, probably. But let's not act like we haven't seen top 10 production on a Chuba Hubbard either. And if he can sustain that over the course of a season in an improving offense that is now going to be better in the passing game as well, helping out the run game, it's not hard to see a world where Chuba does crack the top 12 in fantasy football this year. I'm going to kick it back to the rookie running back position and talk about Omarion Hampton, because we already liked Omarion Hampton, the prospect coming out, and clearly the Chargers did too by taking him 22nd overall. And there is a clear correlation to draft capital and fantasy finish for these rookie running backs. Over the last 5 seasons, of the 6 running backs taken in the first round, their average finish is the running back 13 while averaging 13.3 fantasy points per game. Now you expand that over to the last 10 seasons. In 8 of the 10, there has been a top 10 rookie running back. Now, I fully understand Ashton Genty exists, right? He's part of this class, and I think he's probably the surefire top 10 finish this year if we all had to guess. But honestly, I would rather be in a Omarion Hampton situation on the Chargers under Greg Roman than I would be in Las Vegas. Chip Kelly, fine play caller, but you're playing behind a top 10 offensive line in the league over in LA. And in Roman's 11 years of coordinating in the league, he's never finished lower than 11th in team rush attempts. And that 11th finish was just last season. So the coach speak so far, right, has been really favorable for Hampton out of camp. They're amazed by how much he can actually provide and do within the structure of the offense. I just don't think it's long before we see Najee Harris playing more of the Gus Edwards role to Omarion Hampton's J.K. Dobbins, if you kind of want to look at how the splits ended up panning out last year, because all Gus Edwards ended up being was a change of pace back, and change of pace is lightly. It was mostly just to get J.K. Dobbins breather off the field and make sure both of his knees are still working. So Omarion Hampton, I think by the end of the season, you're looking at a first round pick who's got a ton of juice, who I think is just like a dream in a Greg Roman offense. He finishes top 12 at the end of this year. I wouldn't be surprised one bit.
Yeah, it just really comes down to how quickly are they going to get him integrated in the offense, right? Because it's the difference for me between like him and TreyVeon is TreyVeon's going to be in right away because he has a different role, right? He's a different type of back than what's his name? Ramondre is.
Yep.
Omarion Hampton is supposed to just be a better version of Najee Harris, essentially, right? I mean, he's supposed to be the 3-down workhorse back who's got juice, who's got burst, who can, make things happen. Whereas we just haven't quite seen that from Najee in years past. So that's my only real concern with Omarion Hampton is how quickly can he take Najee? Because once he does, it's
over.
Right. He's going to have league winner status if he can do it, down the stretch. Think of, J.K. Dobbins, like we talked about in Greg Roman's system, his rookie season, league winner down the stretch when he finally took over that backfield for Mark Ingram. So the only question really is it going to be early enough where we would see him finish top 12 as a running back, or are you going to kind of be a little bit bummed because it's just taking a little bit longer? That's been my really only sticking point with him is I think he's incredibly talented. I think he's, like you said, in a great offense. It's just how quickly are we going to see Omarion Hampton as the running back 1 for the Chargers?
Najee Harris has just been so unimpressive. And I understand things can change. When you change teams and a better offense, the Chargers probably will be than the Pittsburgh Steelers. But there's nothing in Najee's game that I see that makes me terrified that Omarion Hampton can't claim this backfield in the first 5 weeks of the season. And if we're talking upside case, the first 4 weeks of the season, that's where I'm at in terms of looking at potential, breakout RB1 status. What about you, Ty? How bullish are you?
I'm fairly bullish just because I think you just take a look at what J.K. Dobbins was given last year. I know that J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards is not the same tandem as Omarion Hampton and Najee Harris, but J.K. Dobbins played 13 games last year. He was on pace for 250 carries in this offense. So Greg Roman had shown, you know what? I'm just going to give the most talented guy the ball. And I know that Gus Edwards had his own fair share of injuries as well, but Cam brought up the point. Just a matter of when. I think everyone expects it to happen that Omarion Hampton's going to take over at some point. It's just going to be when. And if you believe in the talent, as much as you don't think that there's a chance that Omarion Hampton could be the guy right out of the gate. And we're just kind of we're giving too much credit to Najee Harris. And I know that the contract, the money, and the usage in Pittsburgh has, it speaks for itself. But guys, we've been telling you really since the draft, Omarion Hampton is kind of the real deal. And landing in this Chargers offense, like it could be dynamite right from the get-go.
100% could. And he's going RB15. He's actually the closest to the top 12 that we've talked about thus far. So if you want to get in and draft some of these players already, if you're in on the breakout as well, you can do this over on Underdog. They have numerous fantasy football contests waiting for you to enter, ranging anywhere from like a $3 buy-in to, if you want to try and win your hand at $2 million in Underdog's Best Ball Mania 6 contest, almost at 5. You can do that for $25 as well. But we'll take a quick break and they'll tell you a little bit more about how you can play on their platform. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back. So far, we talked about 3 running backs going in the first 6 rounds of your fantasy drafts who could be the next breakout RB1 in fantasy football. Now we're going to look outside of the 6th round at 3 different guys who could potentially be that player. And Cam, you're going right back to the rookie running back. Well, and honestly, I don't blame you with Kaleb Johnson.
Yeah, I'm also cheating. I'm 2 picks outside the top 6 rounds. So this is about as
It's
Wow.
outside the top
The
6.
overachiever.
I'm walking the line about as close as I possibly can. But yeah, Kaleb Johnson. I talked about him. I don't even remember what episode. Not too long ago. I was realizing
Wasn't that
this
long ago.
I was realizing as I was writing my notes, I was like, these all feel really familiar, and that's because they are.
You didn't just copy paste from last week?
No, I didn't. I got all the way through, and then I was like, why do I feel like I've already done this? And it's because I have. But it really just for Kaleb Johnson comes down to volume. It's volume. Volume is king. That's what we're going to rely on here for him to kind of make that jump. It's going to be gross. Quinshon Judkins, I feel like, is another guy you could have picked. Same exact argument, volume. But 2024, we saw Najee Harris, 263 carries. Najee's entire time in Pittsburgh never had less than 255 carries in a season. So Arthur Smith gave a lot of carries to him. The Steelers as a whole, that's their identity. Give it to your big bruising back. Let him run. Let's play defense. I understand Aaron Rodgers is there. I went to go look at how many team rush attempts the Jets had last year. They were dead last. So I understand that is the narrative that Aaron Rodgers has pushed. However, the Steelers are maybe the most stubborn organization in the NFL, right? They're not going to change their identity. This is who they've been for as long as they've been around, is run the ball and play defense. Even with Big Ben, that's who they were. So I don't see them changing that for a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers. And then you look at, we take Arthur Smith now. You look at in 2023. I said this last time. Everybody who drafted Bijan, everyone who had hopes of Bijan, has these flashbacks to Tyler Algier getting 186 carries, despite being a fifth-round pick who we already knew was, Tyler Algier. And, Bijan Robinson still saw 214 carries, right? So 400 carries between the two of them. But I said this last time, Arthur Smith is sizest. He gives it to the big guy. He gives it to the big running back. He's kind of ruined all of Jaylen Warren's stock. On top of that, they didn't exactly give Jaylen Warren a ton of money to come back. They sent out the second-round tender offer to make sure nobody else was going to sign him and get him as cheap as they possibly could. And then, if you really are hating on Aaron Rodgers to top it off, the Jets did score more touchdowns than the Steelers last year. So maybe Aaron Rodgers, it was only 3 more. It was 40-37, but maybe he gives them a slightly more touchdown upside than what we saw last year. So again, like the whole argument for Kaleb Johnson getting there is he's a guy who could see 270, 280 carries this season and volume his way to being a top 12 guy.
I just can't believe we're making an upside case on Arthur frickin' Smith, but like that is the upside case here. Is Arthur Smith loves feeding the big bruising back, and the run scheme that Arthur Smith runs is picture perfect for Kaleb Johnson. So like I also have said in previous episodes, 1,010 is on the table. If you're pleading the upside case, 1,000 rushing yards and 10 touchdowns is on the table for Kaleb Johnson. And Ty, you're kind of grinning in agreement over there, it looks like.
I think it's just as simple as, like, do we really think that Robert Woods, Calvin Austin, Scotty Miller, Roman Wilson, Ben Skoranek, Pat Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, or do we really think that they're going to play a bigger role in this offense than the run game with Kaleb Johnson? Absolutely not. Like, DK Metcalf will get his, but this offense, Cam, you said it, stubborn as all get out when it comes to running defense. Or was that you, Lucas? Regardless, you get the point. You get the point. This team will just run the ball as much as they can. And Kaleb Johnson, look, he's really good. Okay, like he was a top 5 running back in this class with some people. The talent's there, the scheme fits there. Like, I don't know why Kaleb Johnson shouldn't have any reason, or whatever the case is that he can't do it or that he will never do it.
Now, do you want a reckless upside speculation here?
Always.
Always. We debunked this before draft season, where a lot of people were saying, man, Kaleb Johnson runs with the patience of Lev Bell. I'm like, okay, yeah, shut up. You're black and gold to black and gold, right? But like part of me does wonder if Mike Tomlin was sitting there and going, we can get another patient, find the hole back. Like we might be in business here with this offense. We got a offense coordinator running that zone scheme that Kaleb Johnson fit perfectly into. Look, I am not saying Kaleb
But I'm
Johnson
just
is left
saying.
off, but I'm also saying no. But like the fit here is just perfect with what the Steelers want to do in the run game on offense. You want to put a ball on this, Cameron?
No, I just don't think there's, much downside, at least for Caleb Williams at 25. And I think
Kaleb Johnson.
Or Caleb, what did I say?
You said Caleb Williams.
Caleb
Wrong
Williams,
position, buddy.
I think,
minor.
yeah, I think brutal. But yeah, it really is just going to come down to touchdowns and then how much they're going to use them in the passing game, because from the rushing aspect, it's going to be there for them.
Ty,
Do you guys remember?
Go ahead. Yep.
Do you guys remember when people were saying that Kaleb Johnson has some Derrick Henry to him? You also think Mike Tomlin was watching that going like, oh man.
Yeah, you know what? Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry and Lev Bell.
Whoa.
That's what I heard LaDainian Tomlinson and AP too for him. So it was just like,
man, Mike Tomlin was thinking all these players.
This would be the greatest running back we've ever seen.
This is why you don't do reckless speculation and lazy comps, kids, because this is what you get to. This is why nobody likes you if you do them. Ty, I'll kick it to you. Isiah Pacheco is next on your list. A guy we talked about as a breakout last year, yet it seems like the case could be there this year again.
Yeah, well, you talk about breakout.
Not to just jab the dagger deep into your back. I know he was one of your guys last year, but
dude, we were slowly pulling that out, as we were getting ready for this. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. He was my flag plant last year. And then I was like, you know what? I'm back on the train. And then you just brought it back up and now it's right back in. But look, a broken fibula derailed what could have been a breakout year for Pacheco. Okay. Like it doesn't take a genius to look at Isiah Pacheco's performances when he came back and conclude that he wasn't at 100%. And the sample size from last year when he was fully healthy is so small. I'm not even going to go try to like extrapolate or convince you that what he did in that time bodes well for this year. So this is purely just hypothetical. But what if Isiah Pacheco is closer to or at 100% going into the year now? And what if the coaches still have faith in Isiah Pacheco? And what if the team noticed that, yeah, we gave a lot of work to Kareem Hunt, but Kareem Hunt wasn't good with that work? Because Kareem Hunt, I'll say it, he hit the cliff. Like he was horribly inefficient with his work. He was 65th of 70 running backs with at least 50 carries and missed tackles forced per attempt. He was 59th of those 70 running backs in yards after contact per attempt. He was 64th of those 70 running backs in breakaway run rate, and all of those stats come from Fantasy Points data. So whether you like it or not, there's a path for Isiah Pacheco to emerge out of the crowd of this backfield with Bhayshul Smith and Elijah Mitchell and Kareem Hunt, like I said, where Isiah Pacheco can be the lead guy, take on most of the work, and not only pay off this running back 28 price tag that you can get him on, or that you can get him at right now, but get him, he can finish somewhere closer to where we were kind of projecting and taking him to be last year. So not saying I'm all the way back in on Isiah Pacheco, but at this price tag with the possibility of being the guy in this Kansas City offense, man, he could be an absolute home run.
Someone in this Chief backfield has to score points. It's not going to be none of them. And Pacheco's going at 28 on a team that was top 12 in touchdowns per game last year. It's in one of the best offenses in the league. Patrick Mahomes at the helm, all the receiving weapons to get you in scoring position. Great defense that can keep you in ball games. Someone has to score the points here. Why wouldn't it be Isiah Pacheco? Unless if Bhayshul Smith comes out and Isiah Pacheco's Isiah Pacheco, but that's just not a game you should look to play, because that's a dangerous and reckless game. Yeah. So why isn't it Isiah Pacheco, Cam?
Yeah, I mean, it really is just how healthy can he be, because that's all it comes down to.
Right.
Like Ty said, Kareem Hunt, just brutal. I mean, there's been 46 running backs over the last 2 years with 200 carries, and only him and Rashad White had 3.6 yards per carry or lower. So it's like it's about as rough as it gets from an efficiency standpoint. And you got to imagine Andy Reid would not be too excited about giving Kareem Hunt a large workload, knowing where he's at, right? Because he's not going to all of a sudden find his legs going into another year later into his career. So, yeah, I mean, he's in an offense where he can do it. We've seen him do it before. It's just how quickly is he going to be? Is he going to start at 100%? Is he going to need to ramp up a little bit? Is he, that's the only question with it. Because if he's at 100%, he's got that upside. If he's not, then obviously, we could have a Tony Pollard-esque year for the Titans kind of a thing with Isiah Pacheco.
Which, I mean, does kind of make sense considering they're going in the same range.
Yep.
It baffles me that Isiah Pacheco is the 28th running back going off the board on an offense that is widely considered top 5 in the NFL.
Well, especially in best ball. It's like that's where you take the chance, right? I mean, because even if he's rough, there's a great chance he has 3 different weeks where he falls in the end zone 2 or 3 times. Like that's the offense that he's in. So, even if it is rough at 28, it's just like, why wouldn't you take that shot there?
No, totally. Ty, I'll let you put a bow on any final thoughts here. I've been using that statement a lot throughout the show, but yeah, what do you want to close on?
I know we're talking upside. We're talking running back 1, so top 12, but even if he doesn't finish inside the top 12 and he finishes somewhere between like 15 and 18, it'll feel like he broke out. And the cost will then go up next year, but there's a lot of upside for Isiah Pacheco to finish above the running back 20, and it'll feel like you absolutely found like one of the steals of your drafts, I should say.
Yeah, again, you can take all these players right now over on Underdog. You heard from them earlier. Go get over on the Dog app right now to play. If you want to draft with us over on Underdog, we do live streams every Wednesday highlighting Best Ball Mania 6 over there. So if you want to get in on those drafts with us, make sure you do that, and make sure you set a reminder for every Wednesday. Right around 7 p.m. is when we're hoping to go live each week. So we'll have that posted. Stay tuned for that as we go live weekly to draft all these players over on Underdog. I'll close this out here, fellas. I'm going the furthest down the board. This is probably the riskiest player that we could choose as well. Bhayshul Tuten of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the Devon Achane and Bucky Irving visions are still just lazy, in my opinion. I hate it when people are like, oh, yeah, this year's Devon Achane is obviously Bhayshul Tuten, because it's like, okay, calm down, guys. One, we have to understand when we say that, what does that mean? That means, golly, we better have some record-breaking stuff from Bhayshul Tuten this year, and that's just stupid and reckless to predict. But I'm also kind of done betting against these small running backs in ambiguous backfields. Because I did that with Bucky Irving. Didn't work out well. I did that with Chase Brown. Didn't work out well. So I'm just kind of done doing it, because someone in this Jaguars backfield has to emerge. And I've started to embrace the Josh Norris philosophy. And maybe he got it from somewhere else. But he always talks about running towards these backfields with ambiguity in them. And why can't it be Bhayshul Tuten out of this backfield? You can talk about he's 5'9" and small, but like, this is a new regime in Jacksonville. They have zero ties at Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby, no matter how much you like either player. And Tuten he's got juice, man. He was 10th in both yards after contact per attempt to breakaway run percentage last year. So I highly doubt like Tuten will ever get a backfield to himself, but we saw Liam Cohen work his magic with Bucky Irving last year. And I don't want to go full circle on the point that I said I think it's reckless to do, but like, if we're talking about the upside case, we have to at least consider he could potentially recreate that same RB1 upside with a guy like Bhayshul Tuten this year.
Unfortunately, you're talking to 2 Travis Etienne guys. But
which I know I am. I have a lot more Etienne than I do Tuten. But if we're pleading RB1 cases, like Tuten's probably the easiest one to create that for, mostly because Etienne's already done it.
Yeah, and I will say, I do think, like you said, he has the most juice we are going into a split backfield, he'd be the guy that would emerge, in my opinion, as one with the highest upside, right? If they're splitting it some sort of way. If I'm betting on one guy to just completely take it over, it's ETN. I think that's probably just as likely as Tuten being kind of that Bucky Irving-esque, that, that big play-esque type of player in a backfield where, he's the one that you'd rather have, even though maybe he's not getting quite as many touches early on. So I do see that sort of upside. I just think like you said, I mean, there's a reason he's going the latest in drafts, because there's just so much that has to go right for him. Yeah. But if you were going to make a case for any of them, it does kind of feel like with his play style, he would be the guy that would be best suited to finish higher on more limited touches.
Like, I just think he's the most explosive back they have on that team. I mean, ETN just kind of looked like a ghost of himself last year. And no offense to Tank Bigsby, he's more of the bruiser type, not necessarily the explosive type. So if you're going to create explosives in an offense, which we all know Liam Cohen wants to, I mean, any good head coach and offensive coordinator should want to create explosives, but Tuten's the guy in this backfield to do that. 8th in elusiveness rating last year as well, if you want to factor that in. So a guy who can hold his own at 5'9", can give you the explosives, has the speed to do so. It's just a matter of, will he get out of a full split to actually produce, a Chase Brown, a Bucky Irving level kind of season. Ty, I can't mention you're an ETN guy too. I know, but like, your thoughts on the Tuten upside case?
Can he hang on to the football?
Hey, there it is. I was waiting for one of you two to bring it up because I sure wasn't with the upside case. That is the other thing you have to consider.
I think it can be as straightforward as that. Like, sure, there is a path that Tuten could be the most talented guy in this backfield, and if he can prove, if he can prove that the coaches can trust him, what's holding Jacksonville back from having Tuten be their guy? Like, I think the case is there. Like you said, I'm an ETN guy. To say that the team isn't invested in Tuten either is false. We've heard Gladstone talk about him as kind of or he brought up Tuten in his interviews with Jacksonville. Cohen obviously had to have some say with Tuten as well. Like, this team is invested in giving him at least the opportunity. And so it's just a matter of, can Tuten take advantage of it? And if he does, ETN might be on his way out. Tank Bigsby might be second fiddle then, and Tuten could be the guy then. So there's certainly a case. And like we said, there's all of these guys. It's upside cases, and there's upside with Tuten. To say that he doesn't, it is incorrect.
Right. And again, the whole point of this episode was not to call our shots on who we think is actually going to do it this year. These are, again, 3 guys in the first 6 rounds, 3 guys outside of the first 6 rounds who have a legitimate shot at potentially reaching their ceiling rather than kind of hovering right around their projection, which is where they're currently being drafted, right? So, again, don't sit here and yell at us that we're out here claiming Bhayshul Tuten is going to be a top 12 back this year. It's
not what we said.
I don't actually think he's going to be a top 12 back, but to say that's not within the range of outcomes, I think, it isn't considering what Liam Cohen did last year and could do with this offense in Jacksonville now this year. That's all we got for you here. We'll be back later this week with wide receiver 1 breakout candidate. So if you want that video as soon as it drops, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell as well, so you know as soon as that video comes out. Again, we love fantasy football just as much as you do. Not only do we want to bring our thoughts on the game to you, but we want to enjoy and help create the fun and camaraderie in that for you as well. So you can follow our other socials to maybe help with that. FF Fellas over on Twitter, the FF Fellas over on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook and TikTok. If you do want our short form content here over on YouTube as well, Fantasy Football Fellas Shorts, you can find that page at. Our personal socials, I am at Lucas Quenzel on X, Camelot FFF for Cameron, Tyler_Platt. We'll see you later this week on Thursday. Talk some wide receiver 1 breakout candidates. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy. Deuces.
Deuces.